I'm joined now by Alan Brochstein, CFA extraordinaire from 420 Invest. Alan, welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be here, James. We picked a good day today.
We certainly did. We picked a green day, and that led by financial results by some U.S. MSOs that are actually positive. Let's start with Trulieve. We had Kim Rivers on just a little while ago, and it was a heartwarming experience.
So I didn't get the benefit of listening to that, but I listened to the call yesterday, and wow, talk about soft guidance. I guess they just want to make sure they can beat it. They are actually guiding for a down quarter if you actually look at the numbers, but I think you have to read between the lines and just say that they didn't want to update their guidance. That's probably what they should have said, James. We just don't want to update it. But it was a good report. They're cranking. They're doing well in Florida, and it sounds like they have some nice irons in the fire. In other places, like Connecticut, that may go legal, but they're definitely different than everybody else, James.
Right. Okay. So they were, 90% Florida, and Florida's got this strange ability to permit its MSOs to make money. And what is it about Florida from where you sit that's different?
Florida started off as a tough market. Trulieve had first mover advantage, so they've done just a phenomenal job there. The market itself is getting more competitive. On the Trulieve call yesterday, they kind of called out their threat to Trulieve. We're coming after Trulieve, they said on the call, or something to that effect. But it's a market where they have made some nice changes, the most important of which was allowing flower. Originally that wasn't allowed, smokable flower, and that's really been driving the results. You can look at Liberty as well, doing very well in Florida. And for anybody that wants to learn more about Florida, they release weekly data, so you really get some granular data on the sale of oils and flower. So it's you can kind of watch that develop. And they asked her on the call yesterday about pricing and competition, and she said so far not really seeing anything. So.
Okay. So what other great financials have you been looking at?
So such a juxtaposition, and I kind of felt like this week we might be able to look at this. So we've been through the Canadian reporting cycle, and the companies, are all struggling on the bottom line, right? Everybody. I mean, there's really nobody that can say, we're making money in Canada. And in the United States, well, Trulieve was already making money, and they continued to do so. We saw Trulieve report a positive adjusted EBITDA. They haven't put out their CDR filings yet. I want to kind of go through that. They pulled out what they called some one-time expenses to make it positive. But in any event, they're moving in the right direction, to be fair. And so that was another one. Trulieve is one of the largest MSOs, or maybe the largest, depending on how you want to define that. So their financials are moving in the right direction. And just in general, the United States has its set of problems and challenges, but at the same time, it has its strengths, and investors are going to start to notice that, and this may surprise people, but the two largest, as of this very minute, the two largest revenues in, using the same currency, whether you want to convert it back to Canadian or use US, they're not Canopy and Aurora. They're Curaleaf and Trulieve. And it's kind of amazing because when you look a little bit below the top line, you see just much better profitability. And so we'll get GTI out after the close today, and I think it will also be bigger than Canopy and Aurora in its overall revenue. And remember, they in Canopy and Aurora have, the whole world except for the United States, really. And these other ones are kind of constrained to the markets in which they're licensed, and yet they have more revenue. And so investors need to evaluate not only the profitability of the models, but at the same time understand the different risks of the markets as well.
Yeah, would you say that the Canadian failure to generate a profitable experience for investors, at least the later investors, is a function of, I thought, both that the company, the whole sector was overcapitalized in Canada relative to the market that existed in Canada. They raised too much capital because they held out the promise of the rest of the world, but the rest of the world has demonstrated without any doubt that they're not moving like Canada and the US are. They're not, making great strides in adopting recreational or medical cannabis. And so we have this situation where there's so many players in Canada chasing what ultimately is a single market of, call it 35 million people potentially. And whereas in the United States, you've got, a total licensed addressable market of 230 million plus, and much fewer companies with much less capital having gone into it.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to blame the too much capital. I will say the too much capital made it easy to kind of blow through the capital and do some poor spending and build out. We're going to see more write-downs, let's put it that way. But I think the real reason, we've talked about it, James, it's just a very poor regulatory structure in Canada. And, I respect, being all the eyes of the world on you. You want to do things cautiously. But, every time I look at Health Canada and the provincials, it seems like they like the black market. And I know that's not the case, but some think it is. But just a very poor regulatory structure. Let me throw something out there. Chicago, the city of Chicago, just gave out what are roughly being more licenses just in the city of Chicago than double what is in Toronto a year later, or more than a year later. So, and those are two comparable sized cities. It's just a totally different mindset in terms of going about thinking about retail. And so Canada hit the ground running with no retail stores open at all. They were thinking people would buy stuff online, and they may once they know what it is, but that was never going to work. So, Canada squandered really a whole year, and they're still not in the right gear. They're still going too slow in Ontario, and so and everybody's talking the same story, and there's truth to it. Until there's more stores, Canada's going to have a real hard problem really living up to its potential, James.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, do you think that there's a national divide between investment opportunities now that is more or less a reliable way to categorize what is worthy and what is not? Stay away from Canada and consider the U.S. for cannabis investments going forward?
Yeah, I'm not going to say, you've asked me that before. I do think that there are certain better opportunities in the United States, but there's some good ones in Canada as well. I think about the baby in the bathwater syndrome. The sentiment is so bad in Canada now. Everything that we're talking about is very well known. So I think the prices of the stocks, the fundamentals may be better in the United States, and they're probably going to improve in Canada, but it just depends on the situation. I think if you look at the leading MSOs and you look at their market caps and then you compare them to the largest LPs, then your takeaway is correct. But I think you can go a little bit beneath the top in Canada and find some attractive investments.
All right, Alan. Well, that's a great contribution. As per usual, I really appreciate your time, and we'll come back to you next week. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks, James.